Greetings and salutations. This is Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask an awful lot of questions. You can also help out the show by visiting thebittertruth.info. And there you can get some fabulous swag to make your life better. And you can go ahead and, jump on the Patreon page from there and all that. And as always, we are available for free on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, all the places that you listen to podcasts. You could subscribe, like the show and everything like that. We appreciate it. My guest today is kind of new for the show. I've had a couple of really cool people, but this is a landmark human being who did a landmark thing. Suhair Nafal, she's a Palestinian American who was sued in California by the state of Israel. And if that sounds like bullshit to you, it's because it is. And we have her right here on the show. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you? Thanks for having me, Abe.
Hey, I'm really well. Thank you for coming on. Well, listen, but before we jump into the lawsuit and everything, I mean, you're a Palestinian Christian. And I wanted to kind of jump into that for just a second because, I mean, my dad's Palestinian. My mother's Brazilian. Means I had a lot of anger management courses that didn't take as a child. But my dad's Muslim, right? So I grew up with all that crap. And you hear that in the American media, you always hear trying to justify what's happening with the Palestinians and what Israel does. And they always kind of use Islam as like this demonization. Oh, well, they're not even like us kind of a thing. And I love telling Christians in America who have this really bizarre fetish with Islam. And, I've had people tell me things like, well, fuck Allah. Well, hey, you do know that's God, right? I mean, hat is sombrero in Spanish. Do you not know what you're talking about? I really like to have Christians know from your perspective, because we never hear from the Christian Palestinian perspective. Like, for example, it was the last Christmas before Christmas, Christians in Bethlehem couldn't even go to worship at Christmas. There was an Orthodox guy from Greece, I think, who was doing a service. They couldn't even go do that. They were blocked by the Israelis. So I'd like just get you, before we jump into your case, I wanted to at least get some of your perspective from being a Palestinian Christian.
Sure. So as we know, Christianity was the religion that evolved out of Judaism. Yes. So baby Christ was born as a Jew, and he pretty much was the founder of Christianity. During those years and those decades, essentially Palestinian Christians were among the first Christians in the world, right? Because that we come from the land, biblical land. The village that my father was born in and grew up in is a tiny little village outside of Ramallah, and it's called Jifna. At the time he was raised, it only had a few hundred people. This was a village that the Virgin Mary, while pregnant, and Joseph actually stopped and rested in on their way to have, the most popular man in the world.
He's got a following.
The most popular baby in the world. Yeah. So they stopped in our village, and there's a shrine to this moment, to this day that's, that's there. And it's, so this is kind of where I come from. This is where my roots come from. So, cut to modern times, right? When the Zionists decided to basically occupy and steal Palestine in 1948, at the time, and probably still today, there are, of the 14 million of us, I don't know how many millions of us there were back in 48, but I believe there's a little over 14 million Palestinians today. The number is kind of questionable. Some people say there's 35% of the 14 million are Christian. I don't think so. I think it's somewhere between 18 to 22% last time I read an article somewhere. Mm-hmm. But it's still, that's, a significant amount of people.
That's a significant number. And also too, to make it, and not to cut you off, but to make the point that it's not just about religion, it's Palestinians.
Correct.
Christian Palestinians were in the Nakba. Christian Palestinians lost land too.
Right. Exactly. And so at the time of the occupation, of the raid and what we call the Nakba, the catastrophe, which is essentially our quote unquote Holocaust, when they came and basically exiled almost 1 million Palestinians, the Zionist ideology is we are coming to take over a land that belongs to Jews only. Right. And so that's kind of what they're their whole purpose is, to this day, this is a land that we are hell-bent and bound and determined to have it be a Jewish land, a land for Jews only. And so, of course, the Christians that were living in Palestine, along with the Muslims and the Jews, the Palestinian Christians, Palestinian Jews, and Palestinian Muslims, who inhabited Palestine for hundreds and hundreds of years and lived very peacefully with one another and flourished and just kind of, were lovely, normal society.
Yeah.
When the Zionists came, they didn't care about the Christians either. I mean, we were all Palestinian Arabs to them. So of course they were going to eliminate us as well, along with the Muslims, right? So, and that's still the case to date. I couldn't, quite honestly, I can't tell you the reasoning, and that's something I should really look into, why it was that so many of that small, that 10, 20, 30% of the Christians at the time when the occupation happened, or when the takeover happened, the land theft essentially, how it was that so many more Christians, or that population of Christians left. And I guess it's a numbers thing, right? And so that there's only about 5% of Christians left right now in all of Palestine. And when I say all of Palestine, that includes, the Israel, the Jerusalem, West Bank, and Gaza.
Does that include Arab Israeli citizens?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. There's probably around 5%, and that's that's a generous number of Palestinian Christians left in Palestine, including what I call occupied Palestine, because I don't acknowledge the state of Israel, quote unquote. So so that's the issue. There's not many of us left. However, those that are still there, again, I don't know what that number would be, maybe 1 million, 500,000 Palestinians left throughout all of Palestine. They are being abused, oppressed, imprisoned, murdered, just as though they're Muslim. So that's a fact that everybody needs to understand and know. Now, is it being publicized? Absolutely not, because we're the minority, right?
Well, I think, and thanks for kind of spending a little time with that, because I really want Christians to know that here.
Yeah.
Because they give me this, I came up in the church, and long story how I got there, but I got early release for time served. So I don't have a dog in this fight. However, I don't like the demonization of one's faith just to serve a state-run purpose. And so with the Christians here, they have this fetish, basically they love Israel because they want to see the Jews turned into a psychotic Jewish stew when Jesus comes back and all this crap. And so, but they demonize, I think, the whole lot by using Islam as a thing. They don't ever really talk about, like, when Gaza gets bombed. I mean, Christians die in Gaza too.
Right.
So it's not like Israel's like, no, they're Christians. No, they don't want Arabs. They don't want Palestinians. They don't want anybody there.
Right. No, absolutely not. I mean, again, they have made it very, very clear that their whole purpose is to fill Palestine, occupied Palestine, from 1948, to fill it with Jews and only Jews. And that would be, and that's the thing that's absolutely mind-boggling, that they're even being able to, that they're literally getting away with even uttering that type of message. Now, can you imagine the United States or any quote unquote democracy making those type of outlandish statements and these declarations, that we have, let's just say Trump. I mean, even somebody like Trump would never. Yeah,
he would never declare it a Christian nation.
Right.
And we only speak English, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And everyone is just turning a blind eye to it and just, that's just Israel being Israel. They'll let them just ramble on whatever they want to say. So
sure.
So absolutely, they don't care. As long as, if I were to go there, I am looked at as the enemy because I'm Palestinian and I have roots there.
Oh, I was back there. I was back there 30 years ago. Jesus Christ. Yeah. My name's not Abe. I mean, Christ, you know my real name. It's Ibrahim, right? So when I was back there, they didn't give a shit that I was an American citizen. I was on the wrong end of an M16 with my cousins. you know, and I'm wearing a keffiyeh, like a scarf, so I don't get killed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm wearing glasses. I had long hair and I look like a rock extra in a video. And it was just like, you know, I could have gotten killed by Arabs just as easily. I could have gotten killed by the Israelis, but they didn't care. They didn't give a crap. They didn't care that I didn't barely speak any Arabic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So no, anyway. I believe it.
And so it's that was then. That was like in 1988. I was there during the first Intifada, and I tell my cousins, I'm like, I wouldn't go back now. It's but listen, but let's jump into it. You know, your lawsuit. I haven't seen it in the mainstream press. I mean, I've seen, stuff that I read cover you. Abby, you were on Abby Martin's show, which was really cool, but I'm not seeing you on MSDNC all of a sudden, or Fox News or CNN. What gives?
Gee, I wonder.
No, I mean, I'm just,
Yeah, of course.
Some of these I do just for me, but yeah.
Yeah. Obviously we know that a story that ends with a Palestinian American who wins a, ridiculous lawsuit. And when I say a win, I mean, a California judge did the right thing and dismissed this frivolous, laughable lawsuit. Of course, mainstream media is not going to want to pick up on it because once again, it highlights Israel as being not a good person, not a good, it highlights them as being who they are, just
right.
Basically. Yeah.
Bunch of pro fuckers.
Exactly. Yeah. I always like to say terrorists, but I get in trouble for that. So anyway, well,
let's just, okay. So
it was picked up. Yeah. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, but it was a lawsuit. What's kind of landmark about this entire thing, that you won. I know they're going to try to appeal it because whatever, but
right.
It was a lawsuit in the United States that they were trying to file under Israeli law.
Correct.
And I only had 2 business law classes in college. It's not like I'm F. Lee Bailey, but fucking A, that just doesn't seem logical or right.
That's Zionism. They are as entitled and as what's the other word for entitled, as emboldened and as delusional as it comes. I mean, this ideology that they think that they can literally change law for the main purpose of silencing myself and others like us, and like you as well. Obviously, you're in that pile. And the judge was just basically made himself very clear that we are not Israel, and this goes against everything we believe in as a democracy. And he basically, without saying it, called them a state that doesn't follow the appropriate type of democracy that they claim they do, essentially, without saying it. Right. That was kind of in his
nice
in his final draft or whatever. But again, he didn't say it quite in those words, but you can read through the lines. So yeah. So the how it all started was I was on social media, and that's kind of what I've been doing for about 5-6 years. That's sort of my thing, as I am a social media activist. I try to do my very best to expose the realities of the illegal occupation of Palestine and the war crimes and the cruelty and the human injustices, human rights violations, and on and on and on. Right. So when in July of 2018, when a young nurse from Gaza, a Palestinian nurse, was sniped and murdered in the fields as she was trying to help fellow Palestinian peaceful activists peaceful protesters during the March of Return. I posted about her being sniped and killed. And I also showed a picture of an American gal who, it joined the IDF, which it blows my mind how the United States is okay with U.S. citizens going to a foreign land and fighting for them instead of joining our army here. There's an idea. Why not stay? And if you want to be in a military, be in the U.S. military. But this gal decided to go to Israel, and the IDF page, Facebook page, was sort of bragging about her. And so I took her picture and I put it next to the picture of this amazing young lady, nurse, who was murdered, and just kind of made an good versus evil comparison of, here's this American girl who chooses to join a military to, contribute in the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, and next to her is a girl who's made a choice to be a nurse and to help and heal her, fellow Palestinians. It was just sort of a,
and it was you didn't name this woman, did you?
Absolutely not. No, I don't remember if I did or not.
Because I saw the tweet. It was like a comparison. It was like a sort of here's a for instance.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And I, I don't know. I just didn't even think about it. Sometimes that's what I do. I just post whatever comes to my mind, and sometimes it's people like it, and other times it really. But this resonated with a lot of people in the way I wrote it and the way I compared and contrasted these two individuals. But unfortunately, my words were literally misconstrued and rewritten incorrectly, right? And they were rewritten such that I said it was this young lady who killed Razan, which is not at all what I said. So the post went viral. It was viewed by millions of people. It was shared by, Facebook pages that had hundreds of thousands of followers. It was written in articles, and this young lady, the IDF participant, evidently, was harassed by quite a few people. And the rest is history. And I went back and I didn't so much retract. I just wrote another post saying, look, I posted something a couple hours ago that said this, that, and the other thing. And you guys, many of you who didn't know how to read unfortunately don't know how to read English very well, because I have a lot of people that follow me who don't speak. And also I really blame it on the freaking Facebook translator, right? Sometimes the translator screws things up. So anyway.
Sure. Absolutely.
And thankfully that helped me, because I know the judge noticed that, that she made it very clear in a follow-up post that that is not at all what she said. But it was too late at that point. So between you and me, when it went viral and when I knew that it was noticed and Israeli rags were writing articles about it, and it was now my name was now, when you search Suhair Nafal at that moment, during that time back in 2018, all these articles would come up that I posted something about this ex-IDF participant soldier that was wrong, and all this. In other words, they were trying to say I did it deliberately, which is bullshit. We all know that wasn't the truth, but. So that made me nervous. When I saw an article online, I thought, shit, this is going to come back and bite me in the ass. I knew it would. I really did, but not to this extent. And at some point I forgot about it.
Well, I mean, how long was it between the post and then you got served?
So summer of 2018 and then September of 2020.
Jesus. Okay. So
2.5 years. So, and then of course I come home one day and I get this, troll looking guy finds me, comes out of the bushes and finds me as I was walking in to my
There's peace of mind.
Yeah. Fucking guy looked exactly like, anyway. So, and he handed me this lawsuit or this, this document. And I froze and I thought, why did I know this was going to happen? And it was just, again, part of me was just like, this is such bullshit. And of course I was pissed. I was angry. I was laughing. So the rest is history. Thankfully I was able to, be pointed to the direction of a gentleman who happens to be the best of the best in terms of litigation. And thankfully he took my case. He's a board member of the ADC out of DC. He's here in LA. And he did the right thing, and he fought, and
ADC is the Arab Defense Council, or what is that?
Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee.
Okay.
So they have a group of attorneys who are on the board, and one of them happens to be here in LA. His name is Haitham Faraj.
Okay.
And he's great. He's sharp, and he knew exactly what he was up against. Well, actually, he didn't. He didn't realize they were going to come with an army. Literally, like they came. They hired one of the most well-renowned, legal experts who wrote dissertations on why this has to be a law that needs to be changed. So basically, what they're trying to do is they're trying to change the statute of limitation from 1 year. So California statute of limitation for defamation lawsuits is only a year. They wanted to have that reflect to the 7-year statute of limitation in Israel.
Okay. So, okay. Well, real quick, how is this not tossed out based on what you just said? How is this even filed without it being tossed out on the statute of limitations alone? How did this even make it to a hearing?
Good question. I don't know. And I don't know that's what I didn't understand either. They did what they could, I guess. I mean, they filed whatever it was that they needed to file for there to be an opportunity for it to even be heard, right? So, I mean, they came, guns blazing and ready to change the law here. So, they filed all types of motions, and every time, so that it was unending. I mean, it was just motion after motion after motion after motion. I mean, my attorney and his team had to work around the clock to just kind of debunk these ridiculous attempts to try to essentially change law. I mean, they were using cases that may or may not have been accepted in terms of what do you call it when there's a case that precedent cases, right?
Yeah, it says that's that's the thing. It says a bad precedent because what if you say something about Belarus? Right. And now I got the Belarus people up my ass because I said something in America and they're going to sue me under Belarusian law.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was blatant and it was ridiculous and it was obvious. And so this particular firm that was basically coming after me that's what they're known for, Shurat Hadin. I mean, they are well known for suing everybody under the sun that they can, that under the claim that Israelis are being, or anti-Semitism or protection of Israel and protection of the people of Israel, or in this case protecting the IDF from us bad people who
say what they're doing, which is strafing Gaza with bunker busters. Yeah, good times.
Exactly. So. Anyway, and in fact, this individual who founded Shurat Hadin is a woman who was quoted as stating that these lawsuits are meant to intimidate and silence critics of Israel. Mm-hmm. That she is fully aware that most of them do get thrown out. She also tries to file them, and right before basically gets in trouble, essentially she'll pull out and drop the case. You know what I'm saying? So This is a game for her. This is her thing, and she openly admits it and continues to do it. And her husband was just indicted and for murder. I think there was a terrorist plot where I don't know how many Palestinians were murdered, and her husband was involved in that and was just found guilty and taken back to Israel. I guess I don't know if they're still in Israel, but I read an article. So this is this woman and her husband who's now in jail for murder. This is what they do for a living, is they come after. Yeah, these are the people
we're dealing with.
Founders of this. Yeah.
Are you aware of other lawsuits? Because I mean, I'm sure that post got retweeted. I mean, and you made up that tweet, right? That wasn't something you retweeted, right?
The Facebook post about the good versus. Yeah, I just made that up off the top of my head. Okay. And there was the one of the many reasons it was dismissed is because I did nothing wrong. I am
that's right.
A social media activist posting my views on, my political views. And there's absolutely, last we checked in the United States, there's a thing called protection of speech and First Amendment. And it was just such a simple answer, but no, they didn't want to make it simple. They just wanted to keep it going and try to intimidate. And they're still trying to keep it going. Supposedly they filed a notice of appeal.
Of course.
But yeah, it's been an interesting, it was an interesting 6 months. I mean, it dragged out a lot longer than I thought. I mean, for sure, we just assumed the judge was going to throw it out immediately. But of course, with everything backlogged because of COVID and whatnot, that slowed things down a little bit as well. But then again, these guys tried to keep dragging it out. So that was that. And also what made this case unique is that not only did the judge do what any judge would have done, he also granted us what they call an anti-SLAPP motion, SLAPP. To this moment, I don't know what it stands for. I've been told by my attorney a handful of times, but I don't remember. But essentially, it is now her responsibility to pay me back all the fees that I incurred as a result.
Well, and then
and those.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Anti-SLAPP motions evidently are super, super hard to win. So that was another, basically, I think that was another message from the judge to them that, we're not going to let you get away with ridiculous behavior, challenging and bringing a lawsuit that goes against everything we believe in, essentially, in terms of free speech. And so that's what those lawsuits are aimed to do, is punish people who try to sue people for basically practicing their
First Amendment rights. And then Abby Martin. I mean, I'm encouraged just because Abby Martin won her case in Georgia a couple of days ago.
Can you believe it?
Yeah. So I was shocked that it was in the Georgia State Supreme Court. It wasn't the United States. And if the state of Georgia wants to appeal, they can go to the SCOTUS for the Supreme Court, right? But they won in Georgia. Red ass Georgia. So if they win in Georgia, right, loaded with ton of right wing fuckheads. I'm encouraged, and then this California judge setting a precedent, going, yeah, you know what, and because it's a bigger picture. This is the thing that pisses me off when this anti-BDS thing was gaining ground in the last year and a half, especially 2 years more so. Is that like Texas, we got the same shit here. If you won't work for the state, you got to sign a thing that says you're not going to say anything about BDS, or you're not supporting BDS. And that is such a bigger picture than just supporting a fucking dictatorship. Yeah. Right. Which is, and I'm sorry, when people, want to defend Israel to me, I'm like, well, then you should be cool with Iran, because they're a theocracy. They're a theocracy. They have elections just like Israel, a theocracy with elections. Yeah. And Jews in Iran have more rights than Palestinians in Israel. And that's a fucking fact. Yeah. I got Iranian friends that I got Iranian Jewish friends in LA, and they tell me all the time, it's not perfect, but it's, we're not getting bombed. I have a synagogue I can go to. They don't take my business. Right. I can go to a deli. I can get lox and bagels, whatever the fuck. And they don't fuck with people the way, obviously the Palestinians have been fucked with. So it's encouraging to see that this happened. And on appeal, I mean, they got to go to the state Supreme Court now to appeal, right? Because it's not going to go to the U.S. Supreme Court.
I suppose so. Yeah. I'm not even sure at this point. Yeah. I suppose so. Yeah.
Okay. And if they took it to, if they took it to the Ninth Circuit, you'd be great, because the Ninth Circuit skews heavily left anyway. Like cops hate the Ninth Circuit. They call it the Ninth Circus Court of Appeals. Yeah. They almost always rule in favor of the victim. And so,
again, I mean, that they're even appealing this when it was so blatant. That's why I'm a little, who knows what's going to happen. I mean, I get it. I mean, who knows what's going to happen, but I mean, it's just, they're appealing it because because they got the money. They can appeal it. The government's going to pay for these legal fees, and you get a SLAPP motion honored, and they'll begrudgingly pay it if they lose on appeal. Right. But exactly.
So what are your next steps? What are you working on?
I am continuing to be a thorn in their side, along with millions, if not hundreds of millions of amazing social media profile users on, Instagram. TikTok is doing great. Pro-Palestinian TikTokers are doing amazing work. Facebook, I have up to 26,000 followers on Facebook, which is not a lot compared to some of these, influencers. But
that's great. I mean, I have like 4,000. I mean, trust me, I'm not, you rock.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. No, but so my mother was an activist. And as a result of, being raised by someone who gave her life, blood, sweat, and tears to activism work, and obviously raised us as well. In addition to that, I was not I kind of rebelled and didn't want to get into the world of activism. And even though it was in me, I was, I'm raised by one. So it laid dormant in me, in my heart, but I didn't want to be an activist for many, many years, even though I had plenty of opportunities, because I just saw what it did to my mom. Mm-hmm. And so I regret that I wasted so many years not fighting for the cause, but it's okay. Everything happens for a reason.
Sure.
And so I got into quote unquote activism later in life. And it was during the 2014 massacre, the 2014 genocide on Gaza, quote unquote protective edge. Mm-hmm. So that changed a lot of people's minds and hearts. And it really did. That was the beginning of the shift that we're seeing now. So I got on social media. I really couldn't give two craps about social media at the time. And social media was getting sort of big in 2004. I think 2004, 2003 is when it started sort of evolving. Mm-hmm. And I only had a couple hundred, Facebook friends, nothing. And I don't know, I just got on and just decided I wanted to post some of this stuff that was going on in Gaza. And before you know it, I had a few thousand followers. And I was feeling like I was getting a lot of hits and, messages and comments like, we like the way you're posting, keep it going. And I don't know, somehow it resonated with people. But there were many years or many moments where I was blocked by Facebook because I said things that I was reported by, Zionists who to this day just basically spend 24/7 trying to look at my posts to report me and get me for a living, which is kind of flattering if you think about it. I've got so many eyes on me. But anyway, and so, but I still had a life and I had things I did. So I didn't, Facebook, quote unquote, Facebook activism or social media activism wasn't my full-time job. It was just a thing that I did that I guess was good at, I suppose. Mm-hmm. And there were times, and as a result of being on social media and connecting with amazing activists from all over the country and all over the world, who are actually true activists, people who actually have done the mobilizing and organizing and have been on the streets and getting their asses kicked and college students. Those are the activists that I look up to. Those are the activists I feel like shit. I always said to myself, gosh, these activists who have been in this fight for years doing on the ground, quote unquote, is what they call it, on the ground activism and mobilizing and organizing protests and going door to door, knocking on businesses saying that you need to boycott Israel for the BDS movement. So I always sort of felt not worthy to even be called an activist. And also I felt like, well, gosh, you're home in the comfort of your home on social media. What the hell is that? I downplayed or I minimized my contribution to this thing called social media activism, because again, I felt guilty that I wasn't in it for a long time, activism, as a whole. After what just recently happened with Gaza and with Sheikh Jarrah and with East Jerusalem and with Al-Aqsa, I can honestly say today that I feel legitimately proud of and feel I feel like I am a bona fide threat to Israel, right?
Well,
I kind of knew I was a threat to them from the lawsuit, right? That's sort of when I started feeling like, well, shit, I am a threat. My voice is being heard. They are coming after me because I am quote unquote an influencer, which sounds cheesy to say. I don't even like calling myself that. And so I knew that there was a that I could just let it go and be proud of and embrace this reality that I'm a voice, right? I'm a real voice on social media. But after this last slaughter, this 11-day attack on Gaza for basically wanting to protect themselves, I'm not only jazzed and proud and have embraced this reality, this thing called social media for myself. I am so fucking proud of these social media activists and non-activists throughout the world, these kids that are posting, these celebrities, my nieces that really couldn't give two shits about, again, they will be pissed at me for saying this, but they've never really been activists. Of course, they're half Lebanese, half Palestinian. They care and they do get pissed off when they hear about stuff going on in Palestine. And my sister raised them to obviously care, but they would never have gone out of their way to post about what's going on in Palestine ever, right? Maybe a little bit here and there throughout the years. They're millennials, so they have even they and children of my friends and friends, American friends who I went to college with, who I worked at Nordstrom with, reaching out, posting. I mean, I have never seen such a shift, a seismic shift of people having it. They're done. They're done with the bullshit that is Israel, and going to social media and exposing the fuck out of these guys. Like they should have been exposed, years ago, right? It is on. Social media is a bona fide existential threat to Zionist ideology.
And to that point, and we'll wrap up here in a few minutes, but to that point, I mean, I think the phenomena you're talking about is in terms of waking up, it's a United States thing. Because like I've been to Europe, South America. I mean, when I talk to people down there, they know what the fuck's going on.
Oh, absolutely.
You know
correct.
What I mean? It's
the United States.
Yeah, it's the United States thing. Like the United States like even some of my more, progressive, super informed friends would say things to me this last few weeks, like, oh, well, it's these both sides, they gotta
both sides.
If you're gonna compare the Hamas artillery to Israel, it's like comparing lobster to Skittles, to steal a joke from John Mulaney.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they launched missiles. Okay, compared to what Israel has, it's like volleyballs filled with gunpowder.
Absolutely.
Right? It's not even. It's like 1915 Afghans or Afghans using 1915 rifles against the American military, and yet the Afghans seem to be kicking our ass Vietnam style for 20 fucking years.
100%.
So why is it that Israel's so goddamn afraid of people like you? Is because what's scarier than the $4 billion a year we give them in military aid, which it's a voucher basically to give back to Raytheon. On top of, and by the way, I love saying this to American Christians. If you want to have fun with those people at parties, they have healthcare and they pay for abortions, neener. So, but that's the thing though, is that
the U.S.
The U.S. Absolutely. It's waking these people up.
Absolutely. Israel's there's a handful of bona fide, genuine existential threats to Israel. One being social media, two being BDS, and three being the American voter. Right. Mm-hmm. So when the U.S. voters are voting in lawmakers and representatives who are sick of the bullshit and are going to challenge this welfare queen of a child we've been feeding billions of dollars to, and are finally seeing it for what it truly is, like they did this past several weeks. All these lawmakers came out and, made a public statement saying this is enough. That has never, Abe, happened in the history of the United States. And that's going to only continue to happen because the people who vote these lawmakers in are going to see what they have to see on social media. And P.S., social media now is mainstream media. Mainstream media is a thing of the past. They can't survive without going to social media and seeing on the street, real-time coverage. I was watching Aqsa being attacked real-time on my phone when fucking the CNN and all the mainstream media outlets had no clue, and people like myself. Well,
they had a clue. They chose to ignore it.
Absolutely, but it was being viewed live throughout the whole world. Who people who were interested in seeing it were able to see it on their phones, real time, not having to turn on the TV. So this is what I'm saying. It is mainstream media in my opinion, can no longer function really without going to social media. We're the ones that are feeding them the news now. Think about it. How did they get their news before social media? They would have people call in, or they would, well,
they used to also have station chiefs. They used to also bureau chiefs, rather. They used to have a bureau chief out in Saudi Arabia. They used to have New York Times, ABC News. They all had an office in all of these places. And in the last 25, 30 years, they've just been pulling it back. That's why you see Rachel Maddow talk from a desk to another guy at a desk who's usually a quote military analyst who's ex-CIA or ex-military who's on the board at Baker or Raytheon. And so, and that's and to your point, just for people listening who don't know the raid on the Al-Aqsa mosque, that's kind of like Americans freaking out about the January 6th
Oh my God.
deal.
Can you imagine?
Can you imagine? It's the same level of like, what the fuck? I mean, and when I was back there in 88, the IDF used to stand guard in front of Al-Aqsa to prevent little, Jabba the Hutt people from running in there trying to do shit because they knew it would be bad. Right.
Yeah.
And this is to piggyback on the point you made earlier that you've never seen this there was a brief time, 88, 89, 90, when James Baker and the Bush 1 administration had a little gas because the Russians fell apart. They couldn't support the PLO anymore. Yeah. And then Baker laid down the law and said, we're not giving you any more money until you come to the table. Yeah. And unfortunately, that turned into Oslo, which became basically a PA Palestinian Authority thing. And it became like a capitulation to Israeli government anyway. Like all the things that were promised in Oslo never came to fruition. But that happened because of 3 or 4 years of Americans going, what the fuck are we doing there? And people were protesting back then. So it's been about 30 odd years since we've seen what we're seeing now. And I'm hoping that they can capitalize on it because first of all, we've got to bring these guys to the table and put their feet to the fire. Absolutely. And it's not anti-Semitic. And anyone who wants to, send me cards and letters and go, you're being anti-Jewish. No, I'm not. No. To confuse Zionism with Judaism is like comparing the Lutherans to Nazis. Yeah. And also another existential threat to Israel. There's so many of them. Wow. There's so many silver bullets that we have. I have more Jewish followers, Israeli Jewish followers who are blatantly anti-Zionist, who are following my posts, sharing my posts, messaging me saying we're with you. Amazing. To me, that right there is perfect, right? Because how can you say I'm being anti-Semitic when my followers and my friends and supporters of the cause, Jews who would take a bullet from us, Jews who would, for Palestinians, for the independence of Palestine, who are out there protesting side by side with us, making public statements. I mean, we've always known that they have been in our cause, right? There was such a tiny percentage of them, though, and they were punished also, more so probably than non-Jews by the Zionists. But they're coming out and they're not afraid to speak up. And these videos, again, social media, all these Jews, these anti-Zionist Jews, pro-Palestinian Jews from Israel, from all over the world, from the United States, these TikTok videos coming out, these Instagram videos, these posts, the messages, that right there, if that is not the biggest threat to Zionist Israel, I don't know what is. Sure. How could you get past that? Forget everybody else. How do you get past Jews speaking up publicly and shaming you on social media all over the world? How do you get past that? You don't. And that's a great point. That's a great point. That's an excellent point, because that's that. And the thing is what you just said about them, those people would protest and they would take a beating for you, take a bullet for you. If I was around and some guy was bombing a synagogue, I'd kick his ass. Yeah, I don't dislike Jews. Absolutely. I have a lot of my best friends are just like, but it's true. It's like I don't have a problem with the Jewish faith or Jews being insignificant or whatever that bullshit is, all that racist shit. It's just that the government of Israel is acting in an apartheid fascist manner, and for all Zionism. It's and to say that they're the only democracy in the Middle East is a joke. They are Iran. They're Iran. They're Iran. Yeah. And I have no problem with Iran, but at least Iran doesn't pretend to be, they are a theocracy. They say flat out, we are a Muslim nation. Right. And Israel won't say that. Yeah. And until you give equal, and the minorities in Iran have rights, not like the Palestinians. Right. So Iran's doing better than Israel's doing. Exactly. And they want to, they're trying to get them sanctioned, and they've been trying to vilify them for as long as they've been in existence, and they're trying to make them be the big bad boogie. Well, because we want their oil and they're not on the dollar. Yeah. And it's, listen, anytime you see somebody with a ton of resources, we're going to give them some democracy, whether they like it or not. Absolutely. That's why we got ships in the South China Sea right now, because they found oil and natural gas 3 years ago, and we don't like that. So now we're worried about Taiwan. Really? Well, the Chinese don't seem to be worried about our treatment of Puerto Rico.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
Anyway. Well, hey, listen, let me let you do your thing. I appreciate your time. I appreciate coming on. I know you're busy and you got an agenda today, but thank you so much. And folks, my guest has been Suhair Nafal, and we've been talking a little bit about her landmark case, which if you haven't been following it, is I'm going to put some links to in the body of the show. And again, visit thebittertruth.info, support the show, help us out, but also listen to us on anything you listen to podcasts on. And if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to. Sleep tight.